Now, in class, I'm going to walk you through different subgroups of the population, like males versus females, different racial groups, different ages, and I'll unpack those. In this video, I just want to cover a couple things that are kind of interesting in relationship to epidemiology. So, with this slide, you can see that this slide provides the rates of suicide as it relates to urbanization. So there's a metric that kind of divides up different areas into whether it is a large central metro, so this would be like a downtown LA area, or downtown New York. Then you have a large fringe metro, a medium metro, small metro, micropolitan, so a small town, and then just a rural area. Now, you could see here, this is 1999. You can see here that when you go from uh, the urban areas to the rural areas, the rates of suicide increase from 9.6 to 13.1. So certainly the urbanization of an area is related to the rates of suicide. But you could see that this in 2017, right? There was increases in all of these. That all these areas are now have higher rates of suicide, but the rate has increased more for the rural areas, from 13.1 to 20.0 than it did for the urban areas, from 9.6 to 11.1. So the rise in rates of suicide is, it's across the board. We see it in every area, but it has hit the rural and micropolitan areas much harder than it has the urban areas. Okay, so I also wanted to cover that when we're trying to understand epidemiology, it's also important to recognize that there's some environmental factors in suicide. So we know globally that suicides are most common in the spring. This is kind of interesting because most of us would probably think of spring as a happy time. And if we were to guess when is suicide most common, I imagine many of you would think it's most common in winter, when things are dreary, dark, when things are, just you have to stay in. Well, here in California, we don't have to stay indoors, but in a lot of areas of the United States, when it gets that cold, people just stay indoors most of the time. So, and again, this is not just the United States, but also globally. The thought behind this, why is it most common in the spring? The thought is that in the spring, everything is blooming, everything is beautiful, things are, again, opening up, and there's this sort of excitement in the air. And that maybe for people who are suicidal, there's a bigger contrast between what they feel inside and what they see outside. They see outside all this wonderful occurrences, but inside they just still feel depressed and down. That's one idea. We don't know if that's really true, but it's an interesting one. Another thing we know is that suicides tend to be more common on Mondays. Some studies have said Sundays, but perhaps it's because Sundays are moving into Mondays, and again, we don't know for sure why this is. Maybe it's because of the start of the work week. It could be. Maybe there's something related to like Sunday services. Most religious services happen on Sundays. And maybe there's some relationship there. I don't know what it is. Other factors, suicides are most common in the early morning. One study found 16% of suicides occurred between 2 to 3 a.m. So in 1 hour, 16% of suicides occurred. And that actually suggests that insomnia and maybe circadian disturbance just the difficulty with sleeping could be a factor for suicide. And there's been studies that have looked at, is suicide related to lunar phase? Is it related to full moon or new moon? And the research seems to say that they are unrelated.